Okay, so I'd like to talk to you about Michael Hedges with this video. And Michael is, I'd say, my biggest influence on the acoustic guitar. And I became aware of his music in 1997. And I had a cousin that was a real fanatic about collecting guitar magazines. He was a guitar player. He still is as well, but he was really into Eddie Van Halen and electric guitar, and he kind of inspired me a lot early on. And he's actually the guy that took me to see Preston Reed as well when I was 16. But anyway, he gave me boxes and boxes of guitar magazines, like Guitar Player and Guitar for the Practicing Musician and Frets and Guitar World and all of them. Probably 200 to 300 magazines, you know. And so I would always just dive in there and find transcriptions for, you know, Queensryche or Led Zeppelin or anything, you know, that I wanted to learn. It was like there was always these transcriptions in there. And anyway, I found this one magazine, and on the cover was a guy with a harp guitar. And I had just gotten into the acoustic guitar by seeing Preston Reed play and was getting into that. And I saw, you know, the music of Michael Hedges, it said on the cover. And he was sitting there with a harp guitar, I think. And I was just, you know, what is this all about? And it had one of those sound pages that you could tear out. And these old, you know, Guitar Player magazines had a little record. And it was like that big. And, you know, on one side it had Steve Vai, and the other side was Michael Hedges. And so I was like, well, I got to see what this is all about. And he was playing a tune called Because It's There. And I was just blown away again all over. You know, it was like, this is a whole other, you know, side of acoustic guitar I just didn't even know existed. And so I found more issues with Michael in there, and there were some transcriptions and things. I started to try to learn to play some of the tunes and went out and bought all the albums I could find. And, you know, the first one I found was an album called Taproot, and then I was able to find Aerial Boundaries and Breakfast in the Field. And I can still, to this day, listen to those albums nonstop all the way through, and just, I love every tune on there. And for me, I guess my favorite one is Aerial Boundaries. I remember when I put that first album, or I'm sorry, when I put that album on and the first track came on, Aerial Boundaries, I couldn't even imagine how he was doing what he was doing on the guitar. You know, I tried to figure it out. I had a pretty good ear, but I couldn't even start with this stuff. It felt like, you know, it sounded like 2 or 3 guitars. And so eventually several years later, I got this instructional book that Michael helped oversee the construction of it. So he was really meticulous about the transcriptions. And so I was able to finally see, you know, like Aerial Boundaries with these. That kind of thing. And so, you know, realizing that he was doing what's called an ostinato pattern of pulling off and hammering on, and then strategically muting those strings sometimes too, so it wasn't just dega, 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 dega all the time, you know, created this interesting rhythm. Actually, a lot of people that are kind of younger, like maybe even my age, I'm not so young anymore, but when they hear that rhythm, they think of Rage Against the Machine. But Michael was doing that back in 1984. But anyway, the other really interesting thing about Michael's playing that I think is really unique is the string stopping that he would do. So that was something that really took me a lot of time just to try to get the hang of. And that's when you play a string and then you mute it. So like in that section there, or another section later on in the tune that really comes to life is when you come into here. So what's going on there is the right hand, you have to play a note and then do a sort of little circle to come back and stop the string from ringing out. So without the left hand part, you can really kind of see it. Like that. So I had always been really used to letting strings ring out in my playing. It kind of helps give that illusion of multiple guitars when you have strings ringing out and you're doing other things while these strings are ringing out over here and you're doing percussive things or whatever over here. So I had never really thought about, well, what if I stop the strings? What would that do? And it really opened my eyes to that when I heard Michael and started to study his music a lot. So yeah, I really can't express, how much his playing, and not really just on a technical side. As guitar players, we're always curious about, how's he doing that? What's going on here? How can I do that? Da, da, da. But just sometimes we forget about, well, how does this music make me feel? And I got to tell you, Michael's music just always takes me someplace that no other music does. And one of the interesting things I think also about his music as the years went on was sometimes his music got maybe even less sophisticated as far as techniques and things, but he always was conscious about texture and melody and the way the harmonies interacted. He was just a brilliant composer. And so I'll always be grateful for his music, and I try to play one of his tunes at all of my shows so people can really see where all this stuff kind of began, because it began with Michael in the late 70s and early 80s, and he inspired me and all the other guys I'm going to talk about in these videos. So thanks so much to Michael Hedges.